I am 30 years old and my name is Emily. I have a son named Liam who is 10 years old. I am married for the second time to my husband Daniel, who is 38 years old. We also have a baby together, a 1-year-old daughter named Lily. We live in a small town where life is simple but full of emotions and memories. I met Daniel 6 years ago when I was 24, and he was 32. Our meeting was unconventional. We first connected over the phone. From the very first conversation, I felt drawn to him. For weeks we talked every day, sharing our thoughts, dreams, and experiences. By the time we finally met in person, we already felt a deep connection. Didn't take long for us to start dating. Unlike me, Daniel had never been married before and didn't have any children. I, on the other hand, had been through a failed marriage, leaving me with my son Liam. Despite my past, Daniel made me feel whole again. He was kind, understanding, and caring. I felt safe with him. During our conversations, Daniel shared his past with me. He told me about a woman he had lived with for 4 years. They had never married, and ultimately, he was the one who ended the relationship. But there was another woman, someone from his teenage years, whom he had loved deeply. They were only 16 or 17 when they fell for each other. Daniel had to leave for the army, and unfortunately, she did not wait for him. She moved on, leaving him heartbroken. His mother once told me that Daniel had never truly let go of her memory. Though he rarely spoke about her, I could see it in his eyes. There was still a part of him that missed her. I often wanted to ask more about her, to understand his lingering emotions, but I held back. I didn't want to dwell on the past. I wanted to focus on our future together. One day, Daniel invited me to his apartment. I was excited to see the place where he lived, to get a glimpse into his life before me. I took Liam with me and eagerly stepped into his home. But as soon as I entered, I was taken aback. The apartment was old, neglected, and in dire need of repairs. The furniture was outdated, the walls had peeling paint, and it felt as though time had stood still there. I couldn't help but ask Daniel, "Why is your apartment like this? Don't you work?" He didn't give me a straight answer. He simply shrugged and said that he had lived with his parents for years and never found the time to fix the place up. Later, I learned from his mother that he had spent much of his past drinking beer with his friends, spending long nights sitting on a park bench. He had also brought different women to his apartment, women who never stayed longer than a night. Daniel never mentioned these things to me, and I never confronted him about them. I chose to believe that the man standing before me was different from the one he used to be. I wanted to believe that the Daniel I had fallen for was ready to move forward, to build a life with me and leave his past behind. I was surprised when I learned that Daniel had kept a card from his first love, the one who left him when he went to the army. He still had it after all these years, a small but powerful reminder of his past. One New Year's Eve, Daniel and I decided to go to the city center to enjoy the festive lights and celebrate the holiday. The atmosphere was lively, filled with joy and laughter. But as we walked through the crowded streets, something changed. Daniel suddenly stopped. His eyes fixated on someone in the distance. Without saying a word, he stepped away from me and Liam, moving closer but keeping his distance. I followed his gaze and saw a woman with her husband. She looked familiar, though I couldn't immediately place her. Then it hit me, it was her. Daniel's first love. He stood frozen, watching her from afar. His expression filled with sadness and longing. My heart sank. Why was he standing alone? Why was he staring at her like that? The joy of the night faded as an unsettling feeling crept into me. For a few minutes, Daniel didn't say a word. He barely acknowledged me. My mind raced with questions. Did he still love her? Did he care more about her than about me? I tried to push those thoughts away, but they clung to me, refusing to be ignored. Finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Daniel, do you still love her? Do you think about her often? I asked hesitantly. His face hardened. You're imagining things, he snapped. You're not thinking straight. But I wasn't so sure. Over time, I had noticed how often he mentioned her, how curious he was about her life. He had even spoken to her brother asking about her, where she worked, who she was with, how she was doing. Made me uneasy. Why did he care so much? Even Daniel's mother often brought her up, reminiscing about how much he had loved her and how devastated he had been when she left. Every time she spoke of it, I felt invisible, as if I was merely a replacement, never as important as the one who got away. Doubt started to grow in my heart. No matter how much I tried to reassure myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in the shadow of a love that had never truly ended. I began to feel lonely. I wanted Daniel to focus on our family, on our life together, but it felt like he was always looking back at the past. He started to act distant. He didn't talk to me as much, didn't smile as often. I wondered if he was thinking about her. I tried to talk to him again. Daniel, do you still love her? I asked once more. He sighed in frustration. You're imagining things again. But I wasn't imagining the way he looked at her, the way he asked about her life. I had to face the truth. Daniel had never truly moved on. After many sleepless nights, I made a decision. One evening I sat him down and asked, do you want to stay with me or do you want to go back to her? He looked at me in shock. What do you mean? I love you. But his words felt empty. I no longer believed him. The truth was, I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel important. And I couldn't continue living in the shadow of his first love. With a heavy heart, I decided to leave. I told Daniel that I deserved to be with someone who truly loved me, not someone who was stuck in the past. It was painful, but I knew it was the right choice. I couldn't be with a man who would always love someone else more than me. As I walked away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time in a long while I felt free.